This is the Locked On Jets podcast on this Sunday morning. I'm your host, John B. from GangGreenNation.com. Big news out of Jets camp today. Our long national nightmare is finally over. Hassan Reddick is ending his holdout and reporting to the New York Jets. Reddick does not get the long-term contract he was seeking. Instead, he will play out the 2024 season on an adjusted contract. The Jets have agreed to wipe out his $12 million in fines in exchange for him finally reporting to the team. And I think it's fair to say this is going to be a boost to the defense. Reddick has been one of the top pass rushers in the NFL over the last 4 seasons, and this is a Jets defensive line that's been hurting. It's been hurting in the run game, and I do think Reddick can help to an extent in the run game because even though it's not his specialty, he's not a very big guy, but he's been a solid run defender, and the Jets defensive ends have been awful against the run to this point in the season. So I actually do think he will benefit the Jets in the run game. But of course, the biggest addition he will bring to the team is his pass rushing ability because he's near the top of the NFL sack list since the 2020 season began. That's the reason the Jets traded for him. The Jets got him because they thought he was going to be a phenomenal pass rusher. And this Jets defense has been stretched thin. It's been stretched thin in part because Jermaine Johnson is out for the season with an injury. And that has left Will McDonald as the only defensive end who can generate a consistent pass rush, which in turn has kind of forced the Jets to play McDonald maybe a little bit more than is optimal. McDonald is an undersized defensive end. He is a guy who does not hold up well against the run. If you want to look at the reasons the Jets are struggling against the run, Will McDonald is not the only reason. There are other guys who are not performing well. There are other guys who are getting playing time on this line who, frankly, are not that talented. But I do think it's fair to say the Jets are probably playing McDonald a little bit too much. And the reason for that is that they need his pass rushing ability. Reddick adds a little bit extra there, so maybe they can scale back McDonald's playing time a little bit. Beyond that, this is now like a professional pass rush. Entering this season, or at least in the offseason, heading into the start of the 2024 campaign, many of us were hoping that the Jets defensive line would have one of the most ferocious pass rushers in the league. And I think we had memories of the Jets defensive line being a major strength over the last couple seasons. 2022, 2023, the Jets defensive line was good and it was deep. And in 2024, the Jets defensive line has been bad and there has been very limited depth. Now, adding one player only does so much to help your depth out. But now at least, you look at this 4-man pass rush. 3 of the guys in this 4-man pass rush in key spots are going to be Hassan Reddick, Quinnen Williams, and Will McDonald. That's a professional pass rush. It may not be as good as what we were dreaming of, in part because Jermaine is injured, and in part because Quinnen Williams needs to show up. Part of this is that Quinnen Williams is having a bad season. That's a big reason the Jets are struggling so much in the trenches on the defensive line, both in terms of rushing the passer and stopping the run. But if Quinnen Williams can pick up his game going forward and you get Reddick back, that's quite a boost. Now, I think we need to keep our expectations in check in the early going. Reddick will not play tonight. And if you were expecting that, I don't think you were being very realistic. Reddick has not practiced with the team all week. He hasn't practiced with the team at all when he's reporting Monday. And I think it's probably fair to guess that he's not going to be in great football condition. Now, that's not to say he's not in great shape. He's probably in great physical condition. I'm sure he's been working out quite a bit. But that's different from being in football shape. Guys who have played in the NFL will certainly tell you that there's a difference between being in great physical condition and being in great football shape. Well, what does that mean? Well, NFL is a physical game. You got to get used. Your body has to get used to taking hits. Now, in some ways, maybe Reddick joining the team for Week 8 is a benefit because his body's fresh, and maybe that'll keep him fresher down the stretch than he otherwise normally would have been because he hasn't been taking hits since the start of training camp. So if you're looking for a glasses half full scenario, perhaps that's it. Perhaps Reddick will give this Jets pass rush a boost, and maybe he'll still have some freshness to him as we get into November and December. That certainly could be the case, but I think it's fair to guess, and the Jets have not explicitly said anything yet at this point, it's fair to guess that he's probably going to have to be on a pitch count, at least maybe the first 2 or 3 weeks as he works himself into football shape, because the NFL is a grueling league. It is tough to play games in this league. So I think what's most likely is you'll see Reddick perhaps be on a pitch count, and he'll go in on 3rd and longs. He'll go in in the fourth quarter with 3 minutes left, 2 minutes left, 1 minute left. If the Jets are trying to close out a game and hold a lead, he'll play in obvious passing situations because if you can only get him for a handful of plays, you want them in the plays where he'll have the most impact. And even despite everything I just said about Reddick perhaps being a guy who helps the run defense, he's really here more than anything to help the Jets get after the quarterback. And those are the situations where you really want to get to the passer, where situations where a sack or a pressure can end a drive, can end a game. That's where Reddick was. That's where Reddick really makes his money. That's really the reason you traded for this guy. The Jets gave up a third round pick to the Philadelphia Eagles. And you can question a lot about that deal. You can question a lot about what the Jets did. I certainly have. I don't think that this saga has reflected well on the Jets. But at this point, I think you have to look at this as water under the bridge. What's done is done. Now the Jets have to try and get as much as they possibly can out of Hassan Reddick for this season. And for this season is one of my operative phrases. Head on the Locked On Jets podcast. We're going to talk about what happens after this year for Hassan Reddick. Will the Jets give him a new contract? There are some rumors coming out today that the Jets might be working on a long-term deal with him. I do not think that would be a very smart idea. And I'll tell you why as we continue here on this special Sunday morning edition of Locked On Jets. Today's special edition of Locked On Jets is brought to you by Hillsdale College. Time is our most precious commodity, so don't waste it scrolling through the same mind-numbing content for hours and hours. How can you spend it wisely to improve yourself? Our sponsor, Hillsdale College, is offering more than 40 free, that's right, free online courses, including Constitution 101, the meaning and history of the Constitution, Introduction to Free Market Economics, The Great American Story, A Land of Hope, and the Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire. All of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced, so you can start whenever and tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, or just enjoy the lectures. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. Hillsdale, HILLSDALE.edu/lockedon. This show is also sponsored by BetterHelp. Halloween lets us have fun with what scares us. But what about those fears that don't include zombies and ghosts? Therapy is a great tool for facing your fears and finding ways to overcome them, because sometimes the scariest thing is not facing our fears in the first place and holding ourselves back. Therapy has so many benefits. It's helpful for learning positive coping skills and how to set boundaries. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself. And it's not just for those who've experienced major trauma. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Overcome your fears with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. This is the Locked On Jets podcast on this Sunday morning. New York Jets defensive end Hassan Reddick is now officially a New York Jets defensive end. He is ending his holdout. He will report to the team Monday morning. He does not get a long-term contract extension. Instead, he will play out the 2024 season on an adjusted contract. The Jets agreed to wipe out the $12 million in fines he has accumulated from his holdout. Or it might be more accurate to say he does not get a long-term contract extension right now. His new agent, Drew Rosenhaus, made an interesting statement. He said that we will continue to work towards a long-term extension with the Jets. Now, I don't understand why the Jets would have any interest in giving Hassan Reddick a long-term contract extension at this point. I mean, first of all, I know we're speculating, but one of the most important things when you give a player a long-term contract extension is you need to be confident that the guy's going to continue to focus, that the guy's going to continue to produce. And I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a player who's more likely to just kind of pack it in the second he gets paid than Hassan Reddick, because we've seen the way he's reacted this year ever since the Jets traded for him. So I don't have a lot of trust that Reddick's going to continue to produce once he gets paid. He's also now 30 years old. And as we know, once players hit that magic 3-0 number in age, their production tends to go down. Now, yes, it was silly that the Jets thought they would not have to do anything with Reddick's contract when they traded for him. The biggest reason the Eagles traded for him was that they realized they had an issue with Reddick's contract. There were also reports that other teams spoke with Reddick before the Eagles traded him to the Jets, and they were just put off by his contract demands. So it should not have been a surprise to the Jets that they had an issue with Reddick contractually at the time they traded for him. However, now he's here. Now he's in the lineup. And I think the idea behind giving Reddick a new contract at the time he traded for him, well, first of all, it was to prevent a holdout. But second of all, the idea was that this is an all-in season for the Jets. This is a season where we're really going for it. So in exchange for a contract that's not going to look too good a year or two from now, we'll take the hit then in order to get Reddick's production now. Well, now you have Reddick in the lineup. Now Reddick's going to be motivated to produce. He's got to produce because that's the only way he gets paid this offseason. If he goes out there and does not have a good year, he's not going to get the massive payday he wants. So the Jets now have a motivated Reddick. They have a Reddick who has every incentive to produce. They're going to get the good 30-year-old version of Reddick. And there's no reason that they need to go out there and extend him through year 31, year 32, year 33. You don't need to take the decline right now. I really question the idea that the Jets should even entertain the idea of giving Reddick any sort of contract extension. The Jets were the team that was telling us, well, we don't want to upset the guys who have produced for us by giving a guy who hasn't done anything with us a contract extension. Well, if you felt that way then, Reddick hasn't done anything for you. And like, even if he has a couple of good games, that doesn't mean he's a great member of the Jets. But more than that, I don't think that there's any real incentive for the Jets to pay this guy. I mean, really all you'd be doing is you'd be paying for his decline. And based on the way he handled this contract, I think that there's every reason. I don't think there's ever been a player I've been less confident is going to continue to produce after he gets paid. You see it sometimes in the NFL. Guys get their big payday and like that's it for them. They're just like, okay, I got my money. That's it. I'm checking out. I don't know look, I can't guarantee you Reddick's going to do that, but I think you have to have major concerns about that. And there's no real gain right now because again, he's in the lineup. He's now here for this all-in season. You got what you wanted out of him. I think it makes sense to bring him back because you need him. I think a lot of people, and I understand why people feel this way. A lot of people feel like the Jets should have been done with him. Jets should have drawn a line in the sand and said, we're not dealing with you anymore. I understand that, but unfortunately in the NFL, sometimes you have to make compromises. Sometimes you have to make concessions. The Jets need to win games, and Hassan Reddick helps the Jets win games. Jets defensive end position after Will McDonald was very dicey. Now you add a guy who's been a Pro Bowler. That's going to help. A guy who's been one of the top sack artists in the league for years. That's certainly going to help. You need him for the short term. In the offseason, you can let him go because giving a long-term contract to a 30-year-old is just not good business. Giving a long-term contract when your team's probably going to need to retool at least to some extent in the post-Aaron Rodgers era is not good business. And giving a long-term contract to a guy, you can't entirely be trustful that he's going to continue to produce after he gets his big payday because this guy's clearly motivated by the payday right now. Once he gets that, is he still going to have the same motivation? I think it's very easy to doubt that. Again, not good business. So the Jets should be happy that Hassan Reddick's reporting. They should welcome him to the team. And they should be thankful that this saga is finally over. We don't have to talk about the Hassan Reddick holdout anymore. I'm thankful for that. But I think that should be it. I think this should be a very, very short-term deal for the Jets. I think that, he can come in and play the final 10 games. You hope he produces. If he plays well, maybe you can end up getting a compensatory pick back for him. Maybe you can get some of the value back. But I think that should be it. If I were the Jets, I would be very, very hesitant to give Hassan Reddick any additional money beyond that. I think that this was a fine compromise. The Jets wiped out the fines. Reddick's better off than he was, but this is not a guy I would commit to long term. I think you hope he produces big in the short term because he certainly can be a difference maker for this team. Anyway, that's all for this special edition of Locked On Jets. Enjoy the game tonight and tune in tomorrow. This is a daily podcast covering the New York Jets. We have new episodes each day through the week, Monday through Friday. If you enjoy the show, hit the subscribe button where you're watching or listening. And if you're watching on YouTube, give this episode a big thumbs up. If you're listening on a podcast source, please a 5-star review. Enjoy tonight's game. We'll be back after the game to break down Jets Steelers.